All right, it's looking like it's 5 after, so welcome again to those who have joined this webinar. Today, we will be having the Community Health Worker panel on mental health resilience. So we are going to kick things off today with the land acknowledgement. Here at ASU, there are 22 tribes in Arizona, and so we really want to recognize that as we start off. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can watch a lovely video.
Arizona State University is located in Indian country. There are 22 tribal nations in Arizona. ASU's campuses are situated on the homelands of many indigenous peoples, including the Akimel, O'odham, and Peepash.
Arizona State University recognizes the original inhabitants of these lands
and recognizes that they still reside throughout the Phoenix metropolitan area.
And we recognize the impact of their wisdom and generosity towards us.
If you've flown into the valley, you have undoubtedly seen the Salt River Project canals that surround the area.
Those modern-day canals follow the framework of the canals originally constructed by ancestral Sonoran Desert people, Huhulkan, to make this area both livable and a place where peoples could thrive.
We acknowledge that the modern-day indigenous nations that descended from the ancestral peoples are the original inhabitants of this land.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for taking a moment to view that land acknowledgement. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So today's panel is hosted by the Arizona State University Office of Community Health Engagement and Resiliency, and we call ourselves OCHR for short. And we are a research office here in Tucson, out of the ASU School of Social Work. We have a campus down here. And here at OCHR, we're really dedicated to using community-based participatory research. And so our way of working and our passions and our goals are really aligned with the work that community health workers do. And so our mission as OCHR is to co-create interventions with communities that focus on inherent strengths and assets that promote resiliency. And we do this especially with underserved communities of color to create or strengthen pathways of opportunity so that all people can achieve their full potential. And so this aligns really well with the work of CHWs, and that's what led us to this project that is funded by SAMHSA through the National Child Traumatic Stress Initiative. And our goals through this project are to bring you webinars like the one we have today, to bring you specialized trainings like on the community resiliency model, if some of you may have attended some of those trainings, as well as developing a certificate program to certify CHWs and bringing you a trauma and resilience toolkit. So we are achieving one of those goals today by bringing you this webinar, and we are very excited to hear from our CHW panel on the topics of trauma and resilience and self-care. So I will go ahead and pass it over to our moderator for today, Turquoise Devereaux, who is also with us at the Office of Community Health Engagement and Resiliency. So off to you, Turquoise.
Thank you so much, Matea. Hello, everyone. So happy to be here today. My name is Turquoise Devereaux. I am part of the Salish and Blackfeet tribes of Montana, and I am the doctoral fellow at the Office of Community health, engagement, and resilience. And so I'm really happy to be here today to learn from the amazing panelists that we have for our second webinar that we're offering through our office. And so just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. We will have an opportunity for our panelists to answer questions that any of you all have. And so there's two different ways that you can ask questions to our panelists. First is the Q&A. If you look down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A option. And the good thing about Q&A is that if someone else writes a question in there and you actually have the same question, you can just vote on that question. So then it moves up and it becomes more of a priority versus a bunch of people just asking the same question. So that's a great thing about Q&A, especially when we want to be able to answer everybody's questions. But you also have the option, if you do not want to use Q&A, to write the questions in the chat as well. We have a couple of our team members here on the webinar that will be moderating the chat. And so keep that in mind. I also do want to mention too that if you are on the English channel but would prefer to be on the Spanish channel, we have that as an option as well. And the way that the webinar, the panel will work today is that we have about 5 questions that we are going to ask our panelists, and they are going to answer those questions in a particular order, just so that we, just to, for time wise, and also to know who's speaking after one another. But again, like I mentioned, because we do have the opportunity to answer your questions, feel free to put the questions in the Q&A or in the chat, even while the panelists are answering the questions, just because we will leave time in between each question to answer any of the ones that you might have. Yeah, and especially if they're directed at a specific panelist, maybe about something that they mentioned they do in their work. And so, without further ado, we're going to get started. And also we will leave time at the end as well to answer any questions. So that is also an option. If you want to wait until you see everything and then something comes up, that's totally okay. And we will give all of our panelists an opportunity to also answer questions at the end. And so I'm going to go through each of our panelists and introduce them, and then we're going to go ahead and get started with the first question. So our first panelist is Lorena. Lorena is certified in behavioral health services, community health advisor, and life coach, and recently received her bachelor's in science behavioral health from Grand Canyon University. Congratulations, that's big. Currently, Lorena is the coordinator of the local Venetalia de la Salud, which is located inside the Mexican consulate in Tucson, provides on-site assistance and outreach to low-income and Hispanic migrant families unfamiliar with the U.S. health system. Seasoned in her understanding of the value of outreach in the community, she is articulate and able to provide a bridge between the Spanish and English-speaking communities, and is someone who seeks to bring health to her community. So welcome, Lorena. We're so happy to have you here today. Our second panelist is Maria. Maria resides in Tucson, Arizona, and is a community health worker with 25 years of experience working at El Rio Community Health Center. She graduated in 2019 from Prescott College with a master's in social justice and community organizing. She is currently a student pursuing her second master's in sustainable and resilient communities. Wow, that's really impressive. She is the co-chair of the Community Action Board of the Arizona Prevention Resource Center, where she is part of the community-based participatory research team. She is part of the ADHS Advisory Board, working on voluntary certification for CHWs. Her passion in experiential learning guides her ability to create change. Maria's passion for health equity, human rights, and social justice ties into the role of building individual and community capacity and is augmented by community organizing and health education. So welcome, Maria. We're so happy to have you here today. And then our third panelist, which is Martha. Martha became a community health worker in 2008. Since then, she's worked to better the health of the community through volunteer work with REACH and Greater Tucson, as well as helping conduct public health research for AZ Chow and the University of Arizona. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Martha worked for MC3 of Pima County Health Department, helping the public get informed, tested, vaccinated, and providing resources. Currently, she works as an engagement coordinator for the All of Us research program, which seeks to build the most diverse health databases across the country. So welcome, Martha. So happy to have you here. And our last panelist is Isabel. Isabel became a CHW in 2021 for Yuma County Public Healthcare Services District for Health Literacy and Equity. Isabel is also a certified lifestyle coach for diabetes prevention for Yuma County. Before becoming a CHW, Isabel worked for Human Services Association in Los Angeles as an assistant to the Early Education Program Director and Class and ECCERS Classroom Evaluator. She was also a Montessori teacher for 11 years in Southgate, California, and she enjoys volunteering in the community, is super passionate about women and children's rights, and enjoys being part of the Yuma community. So welcome, Isabel. We're so happy to have you here as well. So I'm going to get started with the first question that we have for our panelists. And the order that we're going to go in is Lorena, Martha, Maria, and then Isabel. So the first question that we have, and also for the panelists, if there's anything else you want to add about what you do or your profession that was missed in your intro, please feel free to add it. But the first question that we're going to have today for our panelists is, as a CHW, how do you recognize and respond to stress and or trauma in yourself and in your community? So we're going to go ahead and start with Lorena.
Thank you for the introduction, Turquoise, and thank you for everyone that is here present. I see many people from across the country, which is really exciting. I know we all work for our communities and to better assist them and for their health, but even though we're in different regions, we all have the final objective to make our communities better. So back to the question, I think it's really hard not to have stress in your life. I mean, in general, right? And there's good and bad stress, as we have all learned or heard of, right? We need that stress that motivates us and makes us jump if that big bear is chasing us. But then there's the other type of stress that is the chronic stress, right? In my case, I think the way I recognize stress in myself is it's just the body kind of lets me know. Although I try to go into denial and say, no, I'm good. And I'm kind of known for having just being a little bit laid back or chill, but a lot of times it's either, you know, my stomach or the headache or that fatigue that is it. And that's when I kind of have to stop and say, okay, this is your body telling you that there's stress in your life and you need to take it a little easier. Regarding the stress and the trauma in our community and learning to recognize, and I'll speak for the population that I work mostly with, which is a lot of migrants. I think I see a lot of resistance still within the community. And it's kind of hard not to talk about health and not to talk about immigration laws, especially living in Arizona, strict immigration laws, which also reflect on our health care policies and resources. So for many, I think what brings a lot of trauma is that uncertainty of not knowing what will happen, of being ill and not knowing where to go, of not knowing if you qualify for certain resources or if these are going to affect you in the long run, if you want to have, you know, a legal status or a permanent status later on. the not knowing what you need in order to qualify, and just being intimidated by the whole system. I think that's one of the biggest things that I see when I work with migrants, especially within the Hispanic community. When it comes also to the traumatic, the secondary traumatic stress, I can just share with you a personal story. I went through depression when I had my youngest child, who is now 13. And being from here, being local, I was already working in healthcare. I was able to recognize the signs and symptoms. And although I knew a lot about it, I still felt so lost. So I cannot, whenever I think about or help somebody with stress, that kind of triggers again to that situation, which I have now learned to look at it as a positive thing that happened to me, because if that didn't happen to me, then I wouldn't be able to empathize with those that are going through similar situations and actually being in their shoes. So honestly, I do have to be careful with that, and also learning to paint that line, right? It's like I can only do so much. I can only get you certain resources, but then the empowering the person is also important. But that's a little bit of what I see on a day-to-day. I mean, we can go on and on about different things, but I think that's the major ones right now.
You go ahead, Martha.
Hi, everyone. Can you speak? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I was not sure. Hi, thank you for all of you that you make possible this. I prefer to speak in Spanish just because if there is people who speak Spanish, I'm going to be on their side. Me gusta mucho la pregunta y quisiera decir muchas cosas, pero voy a decir que estoy de acuerdo con Lorena. Y Lorena, que es una gran promotora de salud y una gran community health worker, pues, ¿qué más digo de lo que ella ya dijo, verdad? ¿Cómo puedo yo reconocer el estrés en mí, verdad? Que a veces uno que trabaja para la comunidad y todo eso estás expuesta por todo lo que escuchamos y el trabajo que hacemos. Y aparte, pues, que también tenemos nuestras propias vidas y nuestros propios dilemas o algunas dificultades. Entonces, lo reconozco cuando me siento un poco cansada, no tan animada, cuando algo me empieza así como un poquito molestar en mis hombros, ¿verdad? Entonces empiezo a decir, pues tengo que checar en mí qué es lo que estoy sintiendo, qué es lo que me está haciendo sentir esta resistencia a algo, ¿verdad? Hay muchas cosas que a veces uno no tenemos el control sobre otras circunstancias y yo voy aprendiendo a decir si estoy poniendo resistencia a algo o si no lo estoy sabiendo manejar esta circunstancia, esta adversidad. Y es lo mismo que pasa cuando estoy trabajando en la comunidad y las personas, cuando estoy trabajando y ellos estamos tocando un tema y ellos empiezan a traer a mí lo que les es importante en ese momento, ¿verdad? Es como identificar lo que las personas están sintiendo o por lo que están pasando para poder, de cierta manera, poder ayudarles y poderlos guiar en tanto a las diferentes temas que te están abordando, ¿verdad? Es como si yo estoy hablando con una persona y estamos hablando de algún tipo de enfermedad, pero esta persona me está diciendo que tiene otras circunstancias más importantes que es la salud. Por ejemplo, simplemente dónde vivir, cómo pagar sus utilidades, su renta, cómo conseguir comida. Quiere decir que esta persona me está diciendo a mí que tiene muchos factores que está teniendo un estrés, un trauma, ¿verdad? Entonces, aprender, para mí es importante aprender primero en mí para yo poder ser un ejemplo. Yo digo, tengo que aprender a hacerlo primero yo para poder enseñarles o poderlos guiar mejor a la comunidad a que puedan tener estos recursos, ¿verdad? Porque como promotor son muchas cosas con las que estás todos los días escuchando, como lo que mencionó Lorena, ¿verdad? Que es tan importante simplemente el estatus, como los guías. Entonces, obvio que uno tiene que estar bien, ¿verdad? Cuidar su salud, cuidar sus niveles de estrés, identificarlos, que es muy importante para poder identificarlos con ellos cuando estás trabajando en la comunidad.
Thank you. I'll go next. I'm Maria Velasco. I'm, gonna explain, a little bit about how I have been able to, to learn how to deal with stress and how I also use it in my work as a community health worker. So yes, I've been a community health worker for a long time now, 25 years, but was already doing community health work before that, mainly in the early 90s. So I think one thing that comes to mind on how I, I'm able to help others in terms of, and myself in terms of dealing with stress is when you start building a kind of a resource library of all the experiences you've been through. It just, helps you as a community health worker because you've been through the experience and you can help others. So I would say, just looking back, and this was a wonderful opportunity. I want to thank the organizers of this event too, because it's allowing me to kind of reflect back and see how, my skills, knowledge, and resources have, helped me design my career paths. So what I found is that all my lived experiences, everything from applying for food stamps and having children and raising as a single mom and, all started building this amazing resource library of skills that I can help others. And I think what I started learning is how to make that doable for others. And I do want to acknowledge it's, a lot of my learning really also comes from role modeling, like really. So I do want to also explain how that works, because before me, there were community health workers and patient advocates that were very, very strong here at my clinic. I work for a community health, federally qualified community health center that's more than 50 years old now, El Rio. And they had a very strong community health worker, Julia Soto. So I think I'm just, very fortunate to have a group of promotoras and patient advocates and people that I learned from as well. So the way I deal with the stress is that just building, a repertoire of knowledge, a repertoire of skills, and then using it. So everything from, feeling that, hey, I've had enough. I because I had to endure through a lot of poverty and being a single mom, I think, there came a point where I'm like, okay, no, I know I can, actually transcend that. So I did a lot of actually spiritual practice, and I want to give that credit too, because that spiritual practice gave me like kind of a foundation of how to start changing, how to incorporate change into my own life and empowerment. And now I use those abilities, those resources more in a help others role. For that, I wanted to just acknowledge and the immediate thought that I had in terms of stress was how Tucson, Arizona was, in this, I couldn't remember exactly what years, it must be part of the trauma, but we went through a kind of a traumatic event here when Gabby Giffords, she was our senator, was actually shot at one of the shopping malls here north of Tucson. And we all were together at a outreach event at the Elcon Mall. I don't know if you guys remember. Some of us were all there doing outreach with the community, and we took a moment and we actually just did Tai Chi all together. And I just, wanted to reflect and share that story because I think that is emblematic of how the community can actually, take a moment of so much trauma and then make it, positive. We kind of were able to start the path to change here in Tucson, Arizona. And I'll be incorporating some more of my stories and how I learned from there. I think what really actually what got launched was a desire to pay attention to what the effects of stress is, how to help others with mental health first aid. And then, for me, it's just been, a blessing that I can help our patients here at the clinic with, some that come in major crises, and I'm able to slow down and help them as well. Simple techniques that I'll also be sharing with you that help us be able to work with together and plant a seed of hope, which is one of the things that I actually try to do with the work that I do. So I see, I think in my quest for knowledge, I found that there is just never enough, knowledge. So I want to also acknowledge some of my mentors that you wouldn't have thought, but I worked alongside the Tohono O'odham community here in Tucson, and that allowed me to see how communities that are next to us work together to help each other. So Frances Manuel, who was one of my she's like a grandmother to me, was one of my mentors, and she taught me a lot, just how they're able to help the community by simple things like having a feast for the whole community and stuff. So I think those are the things that I work on, to alleviate my stress and to help others with their stress. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you for all the organizers of the event. This is a great opportunity to bring this to everyone. I mean, everybody does go to the stress. How I recognize stress is I start to feel very anxious, fidgety, very like tense up here and kind of like in my jaw area, because I feel like maybe I'm just clenching my jaws but what I like to do is I like to reflect on what my goals are, why I need to calm down, or why I need to take care of myself. I start thinking about my kids, they need their mom, my parents, they need their daughter healthy, the community, they need somebody that they can trust who is able to listen to them and can help them to deal with their own stress that they might have within themselves or within, other family members. How I respond to stress from the community, I feel like I tend to think about it a lot and feel like I'm not doing enough to help, and that causes me stress. Sometimes I feel confused since I am fairly new to this community. I feel like I might not be providing them with adequate resources, or there's more that I could do that I might not be doing. So I feel like I deal with it by asking a lot of questions, and I'm very thankful for the support of all the coordinators here at the county. They provide a lot of information, and I feel like that helps alleviate a lot of my stress.
Great, thank you all so much. I feel like your responses were just so insightful, especially about the work that you do. It doesn't look like we have any questions just yet in the chat or in the Q&A. Bianca, do we have any questions, or Taylor, that I'm missing?
No questions. No
Okay.
questions.
Okay, so a couple of things that I did want to highlight that was talked about. I think there's a common theme around how we feel stress, and it's a lot in our bodies. And so, a lot of people think, oh, you get emotional and your mental health, which that is definitely a thing, but it also takes a huge impact on your physical body. And I think that's a great indicator, as people who are in the professions of serving others. It's really important to recognize those signs. So I really appreciate all of your vulnerability of talking about that. And also, I really loved how each of you also talked about your own lived experiences and how that impacts how you work with others. And I think that in itself says a lot about why you're so passionate about what you do, and who you serve. And you see yourself as parents and as a community member, and a person who plays a role in your family. And I think all of those are such important things to recognize when we're talking about how we're responding to the people that we're serving, right? Because we play a role also in not only the work that we do, but also our personal lives. And that's something to recognize. And so now we're going to actually move into our second question, which where we're going to be talking more about some challenges. And so what are some challenges you experience when bringing up mental health in your community? Because I know sometimes that can be difficult in our line of work. And then how has this led to experiencing second traumatic stress?
I believe I'm first in line, right? I think I answered a little bit. I got my questions a little shuffled there, but I think I touched a little bit on the resistance sometimes that many community members may put on getting the help that they need. That's challenging. I can recall we had a grant, or we had a pot of money that we were able to use to allow some community members to access therapy. And it was so minimal, the number of people that took advantage of that, which to me, I was so sad. And until this day, I question why many people didn't take advantage. But reflecting on it, I think, one is maybe the mistrust in the system, or maybe the not wanting to know. It's kind of like, I get this a lot with woman checks. We're offering free mammograms, but women don't want to take them because they're scared of getting a bad diagnosis. So I think I know it's a different topic, but it has a lot to do with our thoughts, right? And our emotions, or maybe past traumas that this can implicate. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges for me, is getting people to access that care, even when it's available. Another thing that I have thought of is maybe, our culture is, we've come far away, or I'm mixing them away. We've come far, but we still have a lot more to go down when it comes to education and getting rid of that stigma and that taboo around behavioral health or mental health, or whatever you want to call it. So I think that's been the challenge. Embarrassment, a lot of embarrassment for people, especially when it comes to men. And and again, I'm speaking for the Hispanic culture, you know, around machismo and that they have to be the strong one for the family. So I think that's been really challenging. And this is around everything, not just mental health. I mean, even preventative services, even getting men to get a glucose reading or getting their shot. I mean, it was really interesting to see the biggest men, you know, with the biggest muscles and, you know, the tall men crying like kids while they had to get that COVID shot. But then I don't know, it just has a lot to do with, I think, the way we were brought up and just putting up that resistance. So that's been challenging, but interesting at the same time. I think there's a lot, like I said, we need to learn from those experiences. And then just for myself, like I said, it creates frustration for me because, you know, you try to look for different ways, you try to think out of the box, you try to be creative, you try to, incentivize people, try to get them to get their needed services, but it creates frustration, honestly, in my case, because sometimes we can do, and this is just a great example, as you can only do so much, but the actual person has to have it with them, within themselves, to make that change. And I always refer to it, I love the song "The Man in the Mirror" by Michael Jackson, because it has a lot to do with that. You know, you can only make the change to the person that you're reflecting in front of the mirror. But that's just where my frustration is. So I'll leave it at that.
Para mí, algunos de los retos que enfrento, ¿verdad? Para que traer que las personas en la comunidad podamos estar conscientes que es importante cuidarnos la salud mental. Un reto que lo veo muy seguido es el estigma, ¿verdad? Como en comunidades para la que sirvo, que casi siempre es un poquito más una comunidad latina, es el estigma, ¿verdad? Es como, no, ese tema no se toca. Es como decir que no sabemos qué es salud mental. Entonces pensamos que solamente la física importa. Pero sabemos que en nuestras comunidades la mujer siempre es la cuidadora de su esposo, de sus hijos, de su abuela, de sus hermanas, de las vecinas, de las comadres. Entonces empezamos a negar nuestra salud física. ¿Y qué hablamos de la importancia de la salud mental? Entonces, primero, para mí, un reto muy importante es la negación de las personas en la comunidad, el estigma. Si hablamos de hombres, es todavía el doble, ¿verdad? Porque como ellos que desde los tiempos de la historia del mundo, pues ellos eran los que salían y cazaban, ¿verdad? Ellos traían el alimento y entonces háblales de la salud, de la importancia de que si se sienten bien, y entonces es un poquito más complicado. Es algo que hay mucho que trabajar, hay mucho que educar a las personas. Y yo siempre les digo, es que primero tenemos que tener salud emocional, salud mental, ¿verdad? Primero tenemos que tener la salud emocional bien y esta nos va a dar mejor salud física. Y ahí es donde veo cómo hay que seguir trabajando, cómo hay que seguir diciendo, no es lo mismo, porque las personas tienen miedo de que se les diga que algo está mal mentalmente. Y no es eso, es simplemente que todos en nuestro diario vivir, como enfrentamos diferentes retos, circunstancias, pues a veces nos asusta que vamos dejando esto por el lado, lo vamos dejando, no le ponemos atención. Y uno de los factores importantes es que la comunidad no sabe cómo podemos identificar cuando estamos viviendo en estrés. Entonces, sí, son unos retos difíciles Y una de las cosas que a veces, aunque a mí me da un poquito de aflicción o tristeza, ¿verdad? Que no puedo como decir qué pudiera yo hacer más para que para ellos yo pueda decir, se sintió mejor con la plática. ¿Cómo me puedo yo asegurar más y no sentirme yo triste? Es que, pues sí, trato de tener un poquito más de decir, más ánimo y de decir, mañana voy a tener la oportunidad de ser mejor y de enseñarle a las personas que no es tan difícil, ¿verdad? Poder tener poder platicar de la salud mental, que no es tan difícil. Cuando me desanimo, me animo yo sola pensando que voy a tener la oportunidad de hacerlo mejor.
Thank you, Mark. So the challenges that I see many times are more in terms of navigating the mental health system. So let's say I am working with somebody that's ready. No, they need, to actually access the mental health system here, let's say at the clinic, our community, we do finally have an integrated behavioral health model here. Just the fact that you're ready doesn't mean that there's availability. So that is a big, big challenge in terms of, when someone is already facing a crisis or facing a serious need for mental health services, there's obstacles in terms of navigating the various systems. So I take a moment as a community health worker and really do a couple of things. Of course, I help teach how to access the programs that are available, get the numbers ready, make the calls sometimes, and then help with alternatives. So I wanted to focus on one of the alternatives and one of the techniques that I use for that, and that's empathy. So it basically, when you're working with the community with empathy, it's being able to imagine yourself in the other person's place, showing that person that you're truly hearing and understanding what they're saying. It's very different than sympathy, where that means more like pity, and it sounds simple, but it can take practice, to actually be able to demonstrate this empathy on a moment's notice. And then what I noticed that it's just as important to show that empathy, even if things are going well or if it's a difficult time. What I do is I'm able to recognize, understand, and share the thoughts and feelings of the other person and connect. So a lot of those skills that I use are just listening and encouraging someone to tell what they might be going through. During the pandemic, things kind of shifted, though. It was a little bit different in terms of how you had to work with individuals. So we, in the name of safety, we had to start working more on the phone, less in person, front to front. And it shifted a little bit of our work. So that kind of worries me in terms of that, how to return back to that, what we were accomplishing, and I'm going back, when I was at Congress for 14 years, I mean, I literally had 20 people in a day or 25 people waiting because they understood how coming to see Maria was actually coming to get that help, to get that little bit of seed of hope, and then inviting them to return, because when you're working as a community health worker, it's kind of like peeling an onion. You're uncovering the different layers, and so you get through a few. So to me, the value of the community health work is that we work as kind of a front line, like a first responder. I find that, you know, the mental health first aid, which I had to take when there was a traumatic event in my community, was a response to that, is what I learned, that we can be mental health first responders, so that we can help that individual. And now we have a wonderful kind of daily classes that people can access, like yoga. So I take a moment to remind people that you can start with simple things like yoga or qigong or tai chi or Zumba even, just something that they can start on while they're waiting for their appointments for mental health. I've seen the transition happen over the years where it's a little more accepted to come see a counselor, to come work on your mental health, but it's still not at the level for the amount of traumas that we've been through. I mean, I think that's where I'm, really hoping that us as community health workers can continue growing our toolkit. I call it a toolkit that we carry, so that we can be even more effective, and more of us out there in the community being able to help, make sure that community starts not only working individually, but working as a community to start alleviating the different social determinants of health that do impact mental health. So what I notice is that, yes, that person might have a mental health issue, but hey, you got no food, no house, and nowhere to make money, then those are the priorities that we as community health workers work on first, so that, yes, the next steps are going to be important to be ready to start working on all the the layers of trauma, the layers of what we can do. So to me, it's just been just a valuable experience, because if nothing else, like I said before, that the work with trust, the work with heart, and then planting that little seed of hope seems to be what goes the longest way in terms of to working on getting that person situated. And then the other important thing is now, and I'm paying attention even more now to how we as community health workers also need to work all the time on our own self-care, so that we can keep providing, so that was the last little webinar that I attended, and I was so happy to hear, and I think it was part of ASU, how all those little skills that I was learning way back, meditation and relaxation, things like that, were all part of the self-care. So it's just been rewarding in terms of how I've seen how mental health has become more integrated, but yet more needs to be done. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Maria. Some of the challenges that I have experienced when bringing up mental health in the community has been resistance. Also, it's taboo. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to accept that it's something that a lot of people do go through on a day-to-day basis. There is help. It's mainly, that acceptance. And I do see it a lot in the male participants, that once you start digging into that issue, they tend to kind of like back off, and it's like, wait, I'm not crazy. And it's not about, being crazy. It's about there's a problem, and you need to learn how to deal with it. And there are options for treatment, and it's not, you're running around and, and a lot of people also tend to associate it with drug use, and that's not always the case. So they're like, well, I'm not on drugs and I'm feeling like this, or this is, or it might be that they think it's for attention, or they were just never taught what mental illness or mental health is. So they kind of, like I said, resist it. And in my experience with the DPP program, there is a module where they talk about signs of stress or, signs of mental health issues. And I feel like a lot of the participants kind of just stay quiet. They don't participate when it comes to the questions that are asked, or they just kind of like just sit back, listen, but not really are taking anything in. I feel like they are a little apprehensive, I guess, when some of those issues are brought up and they're like, oh, well, I've seen it, but I thought it was something else, or why are we talking about this? What does mental health have to do with, pre-diabetes, or what does it have to do with other issues? And it actually has a lot to do with it. If you are experiencing some challenges with your health, that can cause anxiety, that can cause other things to be experienced with your mental health. It has led me to that post-traumatic stress, to where I feel like I'm not doing enough to help, or maybe I'm addressing it in a way that people are having a hard time understanding it, or maybe I don't know enough about the subject to even be talking about it, or maybe just questioning myself. And that does cause a lot of stress. And I do know that it causes a lot of stress with the other CHWs that I have worked with, because they tend to have the same resistance with the community that they're working with, or with the people that they're working with in their groups, because they don't want to get that help. It's just taboo. And personally, I can relate to that, because in our family, we never talked about it. It was seen as, why that doesn't belong here. That's not normal. We don't seek help for this. That's embarrassing. You can't, what are your tias gonna think if they hear that you're going through this? Or, even going through postpartum depression, like, oh, it's gonna go away on its own. Just relax. It's going to go away on its own. And you do have to talk about these things to make them better. There is help. You can get that help. It's just, making sure that you do understand that there is a problem, and that you have to find someone that is willing to help you find the right person that can help you with that problem. And I feel like if we talk about it more when we do outreach, maybe the community will be a little bit less hesitant in talking about that they might be having some issues with that, and maybe be more accepting.
Yes, thank you for that. All of your responses are so awesome. And you can just see, every one of your experiences with, especially like the stigma and the taboo that happens a lot of times in marginalized communities, because of not only, the pressure of experience, but also the societal pressures that we continue to experience. And how much, I think Maria mentioned, how much trauma impacts that whole dynamic as well, right? And sometimes it is very taboo to talk about that, because we don't always learn about the trauma that's happened to our communities. And so I really appreciate all of the work you do and the responses you had. I do notice that we have a couple of questions in the Q&A, but because of time, I'm going to move to the third question, and then we will get to those questions at the end. And so speaking of, trauma within our communities, and also, the communities that we experience, or the communities that we serve, we know that we have many challenges, but there also are many strengths. And some of these strengths come very natural to us, especially when we're talking about resilience. And so the third question that we want to ask our panelists is, what are the natural strengths in the community that already promote mental health and resilience?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I like to always focus on the positives, right? I mean, we have to have the negatives, but we also have to focus on a lot of the positives in order to tackle those. For me, what I see a lot is a lot of family unity. There's a lot of support within families, within neighborhoods. we have a very strong faith, I think, a religious aspect. There's a lot of faith-based organizations that have helped a lot. I think that gives our community strength to overcome some, many of these stressful challenges or situations. We, as Hispanics, we are very close-knit. And as I tell many of the population I serve, which again, they're migrants, and myself being a migrant, a foreigner to this country, we're already resilient. We just don't know it. Coming to a country that is completely different to yours, with a completely different culture, a system, something as basic as, I mean, even if we talk about refugees, even something as having running water or light is completely different to what we were used to. And just having that, coming to here, having that bravery, and I always give that credit to my parents of being able to bring the family here. That's just that's in itself is the example of being resilient and adapting to the language. Like I said, the culture, which is completely different, and the whole system in itself, that just there is the biggest example of being resilient. And then, like I said, having that close connection and the family support within Hispanics, especially. And when I say family, it can even be, I think Marta mentioned earlier, the comadre or the neighbor, because, and maybe we need a little bit more of that, but in Latin countries, that's your support. You don't have a cup of sugar, you go next door and you ask for sugar, or if they don't have oil, you come and you ask for oil. So that's the beauty of it. And maybe here we are a little bit more disconnected, but I think even in Tucson, and I speak as Tucson, we have that, like Maria mentioned earlier, when we went to this traumatic event, we came close to do, as a community, to be there for each other. With pandemic, I know right away, one of our wards, we came together with a task force in order to see how we could best help those that were not going to receive the federal assistance money. So, I mean, it wasn't like we just did it. And another example of this, and I always bring it up, is because I've been to other states or cities where people are not like that. But if you see a car pulled over and maybe they're trying to change a flat tire, if you see women, you still have people that will stop and will help you. And you don't see that in other states. And I'm sorry if anybody's here from California, but that I never, California, everybody's like on the go. Maria Sabes just nodding because she lived there, and everybody's on the go. But even the other day, just at the gas station, there were these girls trying to push their car, and right away, I mean, like 3 dudes just got off and didn't even think about it, started pushing the car. So those are things that we maybe don't give enough credit to, but I personally like to see that, and I love that about my community, that it just comes naturally to many. Translation at the grocery store, and I'm always doing that. Maybe somebody doesn't know where something is, or they want a price or whatever, and they don't know how to communicate, or even the bathroom, I'll jump in, I'm like, oh, she needs this or this, there I am being my nosy self and just kind of trying to help. But just little things like that, I think are important to notice and to be grateful for, and have that gratitude. That's what I love about my community and the strengths.
Gracias, Lorena. Solamente voy a decir, I'm agree with Lorena. I approve, Lorena. Y nada más para reafirmar todo lo que mi compañera dijo, voy a decir, vivo en una comunidad muy bonita, donde yo creo que hay muchas cosas maravillosas, sobre todo las promotoras. Creo que lo que dice Lorena es muy importante. Hay en algunas culturas que las familias son muy importantes, ¿verdad? Son muy importantes, es de mucho apoyo, mucha ayuda, a la mejora, y lo veo mucho, que a lo mejor no siempre estamos ahí en todos los momentos, pero en momentos de crisis es admirable. A veces yo no uso mucho Facebook, pero a veces lo veo para motivarme, porque personas desconocidas se unen en grupos donde alguien está pasando por una situación difícil, un momento crítico, y una persona lo postea en Facebook y muchos desconocidos mandan comida, ropa, muebles para un desconocido. Entonces, esa es la comunidad que yo vivo, ¿verdad? ¿Cuáles son nuestras fuerzas naturales? Eso, el de decir que cuando hay algo, alguien necesita, muchos desconocidos salen a ayudarte. Simplemente en la comunidad de las promotoras me encanta porque yo no lo sé todo, pero yo sé que tengo a mis hadas madrinas, lo voy a decir, y que las puedo contactar y ellas sí van a saber a dónde pueden personas encontrar recursos. Entonces, es creo que algo muy natural a veces del ser humano, decir, oh, no te conozco, pero cuentas conmigo. Y lo veo como personas sin conocerse pasan a ser familias, ¿verdad? Por un evento, algún suceso difícil en las familias. Entonces creo que, no sé si porque estamos en la frontera, creo que tiene mucho que ver. Estamos en la frontera y es una comunidad muy diversa. Y yo he tenido compañeros de distintas comunidades, de distintas nacionalidades, y a veces pensamos que los mexicanos somos como muy cercanos, aunque no nos conozcamos. Pero también conozco otras comunidades donde es admirable el apoyo que se da, aún sin ser de la misma familia, ¿verdad? Así que creo que esto es lo maravilloso en mi comunidad, que todos estamos para servirnos. A lo mejor no siempre, pero cuando vemos una difícil situación, creo que todo el mundo coopera. Gracias.
Gracias, Juan. So yeah, our community is very, very close to well, most of us are here in Tucson, but we're along the border, right? And so we're literally 45 minutes. So I think what I see is that our community does have a lot of natural strengths in terms of the cultural legacy that we have, and remembering how resilient our culture is. So I do pay attention and also embrace all that cultural legacy, cultural knowledge, and then end up also looking at the indigenous knowledge that our region also has. What I try to do is make sure that the resiliency is there, but one of the difficulties that many times happens is see, Tucson has like the most nonprofits in the whole country, so we are one of the regions that does have a lot of help, but at the same time there's big barriers, pockets of the population that are just not accessing all the resources. So I always look at the tools. Like we have a nonprofit called Vitalist, and they have a well-being wheel that is amazing. It started teaching me how a healthy community looks. And then they created a collaboration, I think it was with an indigenous version of the wheel, the wellness wheel, that also has been instrumental in me understanding how my community's resiliency model looks like. And certainly we can share those with you. But what I see valuable is just how our community does honor culture I just participated in Tucson Meet Yourself this year, and that's this big event that's been going on for 40 years here. I didn't realize it was that long, but it was just amazing, just showing each one of the cultures that is represented here in Tucson, and the dances and the food and the songs and then the people. So we named it Tucson Eat Yourself because it's so much food. But it's that's the the atmosphere on the good side of Tucson. And then of course I had a moment to participate. And of course my family was making popovers. They were like the fastest indigenous food booth just around the corner. So I was really impressed with the teamwork that brought. So I do look at utilizing the critical indigenous and anti-oppressive approaches to explain and demonstrate the evidence-based practices that have been part of the survival and resilience skills. I look carefully at how other indigenous cultures have utilized. So I'll read a little bit about it, but it's capturing traditional indigenous knowledge and stories is a blueprint for the future. Fast forward 40 or so years to the present, and these stories and journeys are blueprints that have changed drastically, but they're able to capture how we actually bring the culture to future generations. As promotoras, these stories are like ecosystems with the communities of meanings, interpretations, and systems interacting with their physical, cultural, and spiritual environments. As Indigenous peoples, we realize that all parts of the stories matter. And so remember that our culture is based on, storytelling many times. So that oral tradition of how our culture has survived is very important. And then I go on to understand it from another perspective, which is visión y compromiso, which explains how the promotoras have worked on community change by integrating popular education. So I really take a moment to really educate myself and then apply it to the work that I do. And with that, what I do is I try to build relationships and then share this information with the community. It actually creates community empowerment and social change. And what you'll see on the ground is how our community, and thanks to Lorena, Marta, and myself, we have a little WhatsApp community. I know you didn't mention it, and that has been amazing to see with the pandemic, we had to go into like a mutual aid kind of mode. And so that's the legacy of how we've been able to work together to, maybe talk about a problem and then solve the problem. So adapting, that's the resiliency. We're adapting to technology, we're adapting to the new times, but using the old to keep our culture alive.
Thank you, Maria. Well, I would love to agree with Lorena on the natural strengths of this community, as well as Maria and Marta. Coming from LA, to me, it was a shock to see how close-knit these communities are here. It was amazing to see all the love and support that people have for each other and how they just naturally want to help one another. I have noticed that there are a lot of Facebook groups where people are putting up that their neighbor needs a crib, or that there's a person that just lost their home, and if there's anybody that wants to do donations, and you just find the community just all coming together to support these individuals, and I find that to be very beautiful. I have also experienced it myself with even my own neighbors. I moved here and they were also welcoming. I thought this only happened in movies where they would bring you cookies or they would knock on your door to introduce themselves. And it happened to me and I was just like, why are these people coming to my house? Or why are they knocking? Why are they introducing themselves? But no, it's because they like to know who's in your community. They like to know how they can help. Also, by knowing you, maybe you can help them. You can also protect your neighborhoods and with knowing the people that are in your communities. And we have found that to be very helpful because we go on daily walks, and I noticed that a lot of the community members do go on daily walks and they all tend to know each other. And so is sick, we should go take them some food, or so isn't able to drive because their car broke down. Can we give their kids a ride to school? Or I love that about this community. Everybody's just so close knit. I also feel that promotoras are a big part of the community here because it's through word of mouth. They say, I was able to get help from this promotora, and then they tell their friend or a person that it might be going through a situation, and then they reach out to us and they say, so and so let me know that you were able to help them with this. Maybe you can help me with this. And I love that because in Los Angeles, I didn't know a lot of the people that I was working with. It was just, I would hear their name, they would come up, but here I actually get to know the people that I'm working with. And the promotoras, even within the promotoras, we're all very close knit. And I really enjoy that. I really love that you get to know what each person does and how they can help and how they can support the community. Some of the promotoras know certain organizations that I'm still not familiar with, and they have helped me with that. And now I'm able to provide people in the community those resources that maybe I wouldn't have been able to provide if I didn't know the promotoras that are trying to help with awareness. It's just been beautiful experience. Something that I hadn't, something that I hadn't seen in Los Angeles. And I really love how here in Yuma, and I am guessing most of Arizona, everybody is very close knit. And it's just nice to know that you're able to know who your neighbor is.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, community and family seems like a huge strength from that all of you mentioned. And Facebook, I always say Facebook is still used by many communities, and that's how people find out about stuff, especially events, groups. It's a very supportive network. And so I'm going to move on to the fourth question, and then I want to then, because of time's sake, then go into the audience questions, just because we have a couple, but I think they're really important to address. So the fourth question that we wanted to ask is, in your experience, what can organizations do to make mental health programs more effective for your community and others? And I know that Martha and Maria, you have a collaboration program that you've worked on before. And so maybe if you want to start and talk a little bit about that first, and then we can move to Lorena and then Isabel.
Sure. So we became partners in a community clinical linkage. It's a community-based participatory research project called LINKS. And Marta was the promotora, and I was the recruiter with the project. What we do is we first design we, as CBPR, community-based participatory research, we're part of the team that designs the whole intervention, and then we keep fine-tuning it and changing things. So we actually collaborated, and this was in 2018 17. Let me look at the timeline real quick. Yeah, in 2018, during the 6-month intervention, the clinic-based community health workers referred adults with chronic disease and risk to the community health worker based out of the county. So that was our relationship that we built from 2018 to 2019. Our focus was emotional well-being, though we put a lens on what we were trying to discover, and we were trying to find out if the promotora actually made a difference in terms of emotional well-being. We called it emotional well-being rather than mental health. We felt that it was important. So it was about 189 participants, and then 77% completed the emotional well-being questionnaires. And then they had 5 follow-up visits where 70% completed that. And majority of the participants identified as Hispanic. So I'd love to hear from Marta what she felt in terms of her participation.
Pues esta fue un programa de la universidad con colaboración de la Clínica del Río y Pima County, ¿verdad? También el Departamento de Salud de Pima County. Y fue muy interesante porque aquí pudimos ver qué tan importante es. Mi rol en este programa era la promotora en la comunidad y María estaba en la Clínica del Río. Entonces fue muy interesante ver cómo era que era más fácil ayudar a la comunidad, a las personas, llegando a ellos donde, o sea, con la persona, y cómo María o Lorena también, porque Lorena también participaba, cómo podíamos hacer que estas personas tuvieran los recursos que necesitaban, ¿verdad? O sea, una encuesta que les hacíamos y por ahí podíamos saber, ¿verdad? Cuáles eran todas sus necesidades, tanto necesidades básicas como otro tipo, y qué tan rápido puedes resolver una crisis en una persona y asimismo poderla como que se establezca un poco, ¿verdad? Resolver lo que son necesidades básicas de inmediato, ¿verdad? Entonces, muy interesante, me encantó, me gustaría volver a hacerlo. Creo que se abarca mucho más. Una promotora sola a lo mejor es un poco más difícil, pero cuando tienes una red de promotoras, un equipo, es mucho más fácil, y creo que fue un programa pues bueno para la comunidad, ¿verdad? Cómo las organizaciones y las universidades entran en este rol de ayudarnos a que nuestro trabajo pueda llegar hacia la comunidad, ¿verdad? Porque creo que todos estamos aquí para eso, para llevar a la comunidad todos los recursos para poder mejorar sus vidas.
Exacto, gracias, man. So for me, it was real rewarding, and I wanted to give credit, of course, to Yuma, because Yuma also had a counterpart too. So yeah, so when we work together, we're working along the whole border. So Nogales, Yuma, Tucson. And what the purpose is to measure, to actually measure if we're having impact with the community, and more importantly, with the linkage, how do we work together to prove that we are. So one of the questions that, and it's different scales. So one of the questions, for instance, is question 1, is there someone available to you whom you can count on to listen to you when you need to talk? And then question 5, can you count on anyone to provide you with emotional support, talking over problems or helping you make difficult decisions? And then we did the state hope scale. So just in terms of collaboration, in terms of how we work together, I think some of the techniques that we were providing was some tangible skills. So I know we were doing the hand holding. I don't know if you've ever done the hand holding. It's where you hold each finger, and then each one correlates to, you know, how you reduce. So some tangible skills, and we're always as promotoras working on the social determinants of health. Physical activity, encouraging people to do walking and dancing, going to the doctor, because we're integrated, you know, making sure that people can access, you know, the actual resources. Here's what one of the participants said: because I have someone to motivate me. When I first started the program, I was not doing any exercise at all. A few months after I signed with the program, I felt motivated and started walking to the park and going to the gym a few days a week. I lost 10 pounds. So that's what it looks like from a you know, participant's perspective. And I believe that was from Yuma. Let's see. Definitely seeing it once it was all tabulated and seeing how it looks was also rewarding, you know, because it actually, you know, to me, it had felt like we were here all the time doing all this work, and then we didn't have anything to prove that our work is effective. So for me, that was one of my motivators too, you know, just to make sure that we can measure the work. And yes, the results did show that we had an improvement in emotional well-being. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. Lorena, did you have anything to add?
Sure. Just for regarding the question, what can organizations do in order to be more effective in our communities? I think just promote as much as possible the resources they have. Be as basic as possible with the language, and do this in a cultural respective way. And just get to know the needs of the community that you're in. Like I said earlier, you know, I see there's people from all over across the nation, and the needs in Tucson are not going to be the same ones as in Chicago, because the population is different. We're by the border. Each state has its own policies and all that. So just get to know what the needs of the community are, and look at the bigger picture. Just, you know, try to tackle, and this is something we do a lot, is just tackle all those determinants, social determinants around that can affect the entire well-being. So I think that's one of the things that is really important to look at. Just look at the big picture.
And Isabel?
I feel like the organizations can help by allowing youth to talk about mental health, promoting it to the youth. Because once the youth starts talking about it, it becomes normal, seen as something that's normalized. They tend to talk more to their parents about it. The parents start reflecting on it. They start looking for help for their children, and then they start learning more about it. So I feel like if it's targeted more towards the youth, the adults start listening. They start promoting it. Also, I feel what organizations can do is normalize talking about it when we do promoting. We can start off maybe by saying, we're available here if anybody needs to talk about something after this presentation. Here are a few numbers. You don't have to raise your hand, but here are a few numbers if you feel like you're stressed, or you feel like you need to talk to someone. Here are a few numbers, but don't just you know, kind of push it to the side and say, oh, by the way, there's this. No, we can start off by addressing it right away. That way people can think about it as we're doing our promoting for other health issues. Or, you know, I just feel like it just needs to be promoted. It's something that the community needs to understand, that, you know, there is that help, that we're not going to judge you, that, you know, we are trying to educate the community on what mental health is, and that, you know, the help is there. We're not trying to force you to go into it. It's just, it's there.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. And I love the collaboration that I see with just all of you as panelists and the work that you do. And that in itself, I feel like shows such a community in your professions, right? And it mirrors kind of the things that you value in the people you serve. So I think that's huge. And so we're going to move to the questions that we have from the audience. We have 3 of them. One is specific for one of the panelists, but before I get to that question, the first 2 questions, I'm going to open it up to any of the panelists if any of you want to answer it. The first question is, and I think this is more in regards to kind of the first question that we asked, and you know, the stress and how you recognize it and respond to it in your profession. So to what extent do you allow yourself to help a family without being consumed by your work?
You want me to tackle that one, or?
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, it's open to anyone. Yeah.
That's something that takes daily practice. It's not easy, and you do become better at it, but I have learned to, you know, kind of just visually get home and take off that robe or whatever, and just hang it and leave it there until the next day. And one of the things that I've had a hard time with is prioritizing and juggling things around, right? But it comes to a point where for self-care, you need to learn how to say no. And every year, this is my New Year's resolution, is learn to say no. And I have to, like, I start really good, I'm gonna be honest, and then by like March or April, I'm like falling again. But I think again, it's practice. But yeah, you definitely, you gotta have your space, you know. And like I tell my any relationship, even my children, I'm like, this is my space, that's your space, and this is our space. So we gotta respect those boundaries. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is just setting limitations and putting up those boundaries.
Pues yo voy a decir que sí, toma estar todos los días, ¿verdad? Diciendo, estoy aquí porque amo estar aquí. Y una de las cosas que yo he aprendido a decirme con los años es que siempre me repito a mí misma, esto también va a pasar, ¿verdad? No voy aprendo que puedo estar mejor, ¿verdad? Que no es como que tengo que estar un poco abrumada, tanto por las cosas que vienen a mi vida, como por las historias que escucho en mi trabajo, ¿verdad? Es como decir, esto va a pasar. Y también hago mucha meditación y no pienso en el futuro en negativo. Y comparto mucho con las personas en la comunidad. Si voy a pensar en algo en el futuro, planeo mi vida, pero no me pongo a visualizar, ¿verdad? Que la tragedia va a venir a mí, porque creo que es una de las cosas que a veces tenemos los seres humanos, ¿verdad? Visualizamos las cosas negativas. Entonces es todos los días tratar un poco de ver para mí que estar enfocada en mis emociones, cómo me siento, y buscar las emociones que sean positivas, quitar de mí lo que es algo negativo, y así mismo compartirlo, ¿no? Todos los días es estar compartiendo todo lo mejor que pueda ser negativo. Y algo que mencionó Lorena, pues que siempre estoy pensando en que sé que no le voy a cambiar la vida a una persona en un día, ¿verdad? O con una llamada, pero algo que yo pueda hacer por una persona para que pueda es como subir de un escalón, ¿verdad? Entonces siempre me recuerdo a mí misma que no me voy a hacer como decir que no lo hice bien. Voy a decir que si tan solo escuché a una persona y eso ayudó a la persona a sentirse mejor, lo hice bien, ¿verdad? Para poder yo sentirme bien, saber que estoy haciendo lo correcto, lo mejor, y que no estoy aquí para, ¿verdad? Como para cambiar todo en una sola llamada o en un solo día, sino que voy a tener otra oportunidad de seguir haciendo lo mejor que puedo y siempre empezando por mí, recordándome que no puedo dar lo que no tengo. Gracias.
Thank you. So for me, certainly when I'm working with my community members and my patients, I mean, I'm trying to go A to Z. So, you know, trying to make sure that, you know, I'm tackling an issue, but there's, you know, perhaps other issues that affect that issue. So I call that going from A to Z, right? Making sure that we really go in depth, right? It can take several visits. I call it, you know, of course, it's kind of like a brief intervention where I'm trying to help. But for me, it's just been important to you know, not take on more once I'm at home, you know, like it's not possible sometimes to keep helping, like, you know, like there's a boundary, you know, I'm not going to be able to problem solve, you know, on a social level, like the neighbor but yet there is a degree that overspills into the community. Many times when you're shopping, you might be, you know, next to somebody that knows you and comes to you. So yeah, I mean, there is a little overlap, but it's you know, just important to make sure that you're always doing a little self-care for yourself, and that you're also incorporating self-care at work as well, you know, taking that 15-minute walk, taking you know, an exercise class perhaps. I'm not the best at that. I'm still learning. So this year, you know, and I like what Lorena said, sometimes you set the goals, but then you have to reflect back and find out, okay, maybe, you know, I'll start all over again next year with the goals. But you know, the consuming is just the satisfaction is the reward of seeing somebody evolve, you know, into well-being, you know, evolve into making sure that I think yesterday somebody reminded me, oh, you helped me completely with this. So it's just important to kind of also hear that from the patients. They tell you, okay, when we work together, you help me accomplish this, and this. And really what they're accomplishing is their own transformation, their own change. We're just, you know, planting those seeds, helping with the resources and encouraging. So that's the reward. And then certainly being able to take a step back and take care of yourself after the day is over. Thank you.
For me, this is an interesting question because I'm still learning to not be consumed by my work. I am, like I said, fairly new to being a CHW. And in the beginning, I did experience a lot of that. And I would go home and I would, you know, how could I help this person more? What can I do? So I would go home and even further do research on the topic or you know, what direction I can point them in. But now I've tended to kind of write it down, how I help them, the positive things that I have done. And that has helped me keep it at work versus taking it home. That way I can spend more time, you know, being mom at home and not just, you know, thinking about it. And that has also helped me with my anxiety. I am a person that does, you know, suffer from anxiety. And this job has in the beginning started taking a toll on my mental health. But thankfully, I've had a lot of support here within this organization, and they've normalized it, and they've helped with a lot of trainings, a lot of exercises that I have been able to incorporate in my daily life to help me not take my work home or not deal with these stressors at home. So I'm very grateful for the opportunities that are being offered to the CHWs, at least in our organization. And I really hope that a lot of organizations will take that into effect as well, because it has been very helpful and very useful.
Thank you for that. Yes, I know in this work of serving others, it can be very difficult to not take that on, especially with our passion for serving the communities that we do. It can, and it's a learning experience. And sometimes, you're learning as you're going, and that's really how it happens. And so this next question is, it pertains to the second question that we asked around the challenges that we experience, or you all experience, when bringing up mental health. And so one of the attendees asked, when handling the taboo and the stigma around mental health, which is what you all talked about, what approach has best helped you reach members of the community, whether it's specifically maybe group education versus one-on-one? I don't know if anyone or panelist wants to touch on that question.
I can share a little bit, and usually what I do, and I mentioned it earlier, is just share my personal experience around mental health and stigma, and this can be my own experience as well as the experience around within my family, and that's one of the things that actually led me into getting a degree in behavioral health is space, because of my experiences. But I think that opens up that trust issue, that door, in order to get people to talk, is once you share about your personal experiences, and mine is the postpartum depression, it facilitates that talk, and that kind of that elephant in the room, or it just makes it easier to share. And it doesn't have to be that they need to share. I mean, even if they just listen to you, and then they start just kind of relating with things that maybe you felt, that will in itself help. Because I remember when I went to a group, support group, it helped me tremendously. And I always remember this, just to listen to the other participants share their story and how I related to them, giving me that peace, saying, I'm not the only one experiencing this. I'm not the only one having these intrusive thoughts. So if they're here and they're well, and they're being able to care for their child, then I'm going to be okay. And I always have that present, that even if they don't talk about it or open up, it's really important just to share that. Because, and I think Marta touched on it, just as long as you touch one person, or you make that difference, or you plant that seed, or whatever you want to call it, into that one person, I'm grateful for that, because that's all it takes. Just one person, you make a difference already, whether they tell you or not. In most cases they will let you know, but just have that assurance that your experience may help others. So I think that's been very helpful in approaching the topic.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Lorena. I think that is really, you give really good insight in how to
Did I leave you in awe? Is that why you?
Yeah, I was trying to think, because it does give such good insight, and actually how to implement intervention, and also how you communicate to people who might really struggle with that, understanding the importance of behavioral health, and even the services that, as community health workers, you can provide to them or connect them with. I think that's really big. And speaking of intervention, we have actually a question specifically for Maria Velasco. And the question, and I know it came up during the time that you were talking about links, but just in general, an attendee wanted to know what kind of intervention you used or you're using now, and what is the name of that intervention?
Okay, so we did actually launch another community-based participatory research called Unidos. And Unidos is what, we actually designed for this. It actually corresponded exactly with the pandemic 2020. And we had to adapt, to the pandemic. But our focus on that one, it is basically also the community clinical linkages. We use a tool called REDCap, and REDCap has a, the Prepare, which is a questionnaire on the social determinants of health embedded. But the nice thing of is that it gives, like, you're not just asking, do you need food? You're actually connecting the resources on the spot with the participants. So I think, and the evolution, basically what we're studying on this one is the social cultural resiliency model. So we took a focus on that resiliency that we were talking about with the community, and how can we measure how the resiliency is, in our case, we're obviously gonna reflect on the pandemic and the effect of that and how we had to adapt. So that's what it looks like now. And then we also recently all took our training in community resiliency model, which is an amazing tool for, so that, remember I was talking about the toolkit. So that's an amazing tool. And I think a lot of us were able to learn this technique, and looking forward to launching that in the community. That will be a way to teach some techniques that actually counteract the effects of trauma, or the effects of just the stress, the daily stress, and stay in your okay zone. So I'm looking forward to getting even more skilled at that model. But thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much for that. And yeah, speaking of CRIM, or the community resiliency model, that is such an amazing tool to have, and when you're working with not only for the communities that you work with, but also for yourself, because when you practice those skill sets too, it really helps you in your profession. And so we do have an evaluation that we ask attendees to fill out. So the link is actually in the chat. If whoever is attending this webinar can please fill that out. And there's also an opportunity, if you want to keep in touch with our office and the things that we offer CHWs, please, there's an option in the evaluation to do that. And because CRIM is something that we offer workshops on CRIM, and there's just so many opportunities that we want to provide to CHWs, and to add to, like Maria was saying, to your toolbox of serving the communities that you serve, and also to be a part of the work that we do and in our office, because we really want to integrate that CHW perspective. And that's why this panel is so important. And just to hear the expertise that you all have is so valuable in the work that you do, because I know that, you being on the front line and working with these communities every day, and your passion and your commitment just shines through everything that you talked about today. And I think that's so important for, to provide insight to other CHWs, and also to other people that we have on this webinar who might be watching this webinar in the future, on what that work looks like. So thank you all so much. And we have about 10 minutes. So just the last thing that I want from each of you, all people are probably filling out the evaluation, is just one short one-liner from you, each of you, about really, I guess on the topic of mental health, and kind of tapping into those strengths and what that might look for you as a community health worker. And if you have anything to add in terms of yeah, like, you know, to inspire other community health workers or people who work with the community that you serve. So we'll just go in the order that we originally had. So Lorena, if you want to go first.
Sure. So in the spirit of the holidays and all that, I guess you start to reflect around what you've accomplished during this past year, what you've learned. I think focusing on all that is very, very important. Gratitude is so important. I mean, I start my day off with just gratitude, you know, whether I just say it mentally or I say it out loud or I write it, which I try to write it. And I try to get my kids into that habit as well. We have a little gratitude box where they can just put it in and then we revisit it like whenever we're feeling down, which is a really cute exercise that I've learned. But just that, you know, reflecting around what we've accomplished, how far we've come, and just setting those maybe new goals based on that, based on our learnings and our findings. Because time goes by so fast that we get all caught up in our daily routines and we don't give ourselves that time to just kind of take that breath and just reflect. So I think that's my final spiel. It's just, you know, reflect on what we've done, what we're doing as a workforce, as a community, and be grateful for what we have, because we work with a lot of complicated situations, and that's something I have learned, is to be grateful for what I have in comparison to what others are lacking.
Bueno, yo voy a leer esto. Dice, todo un árbol fue una semilla. Tu trabajo es plantar semillas. Si las riegas, la naturaleza hará su magia. Paciencia con las distintas temporadas. Para mí, servir a la comunidad es eso, ¿verdad? Es decir, simplemente poniendo la semilla, y yo sé que viene alguien más atrás de mí regando, la verdad, esta comunidad hermosa, como lo dije, de promotoras. Y quisiera de verdad decir de corazón a todas mis compañeras, gracias. Yo no lo hago sola. Lo hago a través de ustedes y con ustedes. Y estoy muy agradecida por mi profesión. Estoy muy agradecida porque es algo que me llena el alma, como yo sé que a ustedes, y como dijo Lorena y todos ustedes, es decir que de verdad amamos la profesión y amamos estar aquí. Y gracias a ustedes que hicieron posible este webinar, a todos los que nos están escuchando, gracias por seguir insistiendo. Es importante que la comunidad sepa que existe resiliencia, que podemos, ¿verdad?, aprender a estar mejor, que podemos aprender de la salud mental, que podemos aprender a saber cuáles son nuestras emociones. Gracias a todos ustedes por hacer posible que haya este tipo de webinars y seguir trabajando mucho, porque de verdad que la comunidad necesita mucho apoyo para poder tener una salud mental. Una persona educada en salud mental va a poder tener las herramientas para poder ser resiliente en su diario vivir. Gracias.
And I'll answer the question and hopefully answer the last question that's in the Q&A too, with my little story that I'm going to tell you guys. So one day I was watching the garden, watering the garden, my garden at home, and there was a plant that almost looked like a weed because so many of them were growing everywhere. I showed it to my mother and she told me it was epazote. It's very good for the stomach pain and it tastes wonderful in quesadillas, she said. I smelled it and a wonderful sensation of warmth came over me when I remembered the quesadillas with epazote that my abuelita made for me as a child. This is a story that symbolizes the tools that I will share with you so that you can learn about community resiliency model and join the wellness movement. In this story, I just shared, I experienced many of the ways that I learned to incorporate the CREM well-being techniques. And hopefully will I be able to demonstrate what the resiliency is and how to balance it. and also to learn how my nervous system can stay balanced by knowing about my OK zone, also known as the resiliency zone. So I leave you with that little story. It's just a reflection of how you do want to use culture, and you do want to use your own skills and knowledge to make sure that you reach people. But it's been a wonderful experience, and thank you so much for all the wonderful insight. Thank you.
For me, this has been a work of heart. You can't do it if you don't feel it. I just agree with all of the other panelists. It's just about reflecting and taking back what you learned from the people, and just knowing that you made a difference in someone's life is enough for me to feel accomplished. Before, I used to think that nothing that I was saying or nothing that I was doing to help the community was working. And then I started getting a lot of feedback from the community saying, thank you, or from my participants in my programs. And I was able to actually see one of my participants walk without a cane to me, and for him to share that because he had stuck to the program, and now he was able to do that and went on vacation and had pictures of himself not in a wheelchair, not using the cane. To me, that was the most beautiful thing ever. And then him coming to the group, showing me muscles, and it was just beautiful. So just that, it's a work of heart. It's what you do. It's not, and then what they do for you, you get that beautiful feeling. So thank you. And thank you all, ladies, for what you do, and everybody out there in the community, all the CHWs. You guys are wonderful.
Thank you all so much. That's just a perfect ending to this. This time that we spent together and all the knowledge that was shared. So thank you all so much. We're so appreciative of you and the work that you do. And so again, we posted the link for the evaluation one more time in the chat if you have an opportunity to fill that out. And like I mentioned in the evaluation, if you're interested in keeping up to date with what we provided through our office, please fill that or let us know in the evaluation, and we will be in contact. But yes, thank you all so much. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And we hope to see you all on our next webinar that we do. And also this webinar is being recorded, so it will be available later for any of you all to view again, or if you want to share it with anyone that you know or work with, that's you can also do that. And so again, thank you all for everything, and we appreciate you so much. So have a wonderful day, everyone.